getting ready for college tours.
Okay, where's she gonna go?
She wants to go to HBCU in Alabama, but I don't know yet.
That's far away.
She wants to get far.
Could you lock her up? I mean, do you want her to go away?
No, but I want what she wants. You know?
Ah.
My son, he wants to stay here.
Hello, Amy. Yeah. Okay, well, wish them luck.
Yeah, I'll be there. I got the timeshare up there, so it's working out.
Yeah, it's good. Jordan, you're good? I'm not talking because I don't want to disturb you. But you can continue looking at those cards. Don't worry about the class. Just focus on that. You know, get the A's and apply to Stanford and get married and have a dozen kids. It's good. Half a dozen is good too. A dog. That's the same, really. Jordan, anything you want to talk about? Okay. Anything, Matthew?
Yeah, how does the language that we speak form our perspective? Like it might come with certain biases or certain ways that things are framed or talked about that might inform how we think about the world in ways that we don't understand. English, would that maybe shape our understanding of what we're talking about differently?
I don't know if my response to your question is related in any way, but I'll give it a shot. So marriage has two very, 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 very different and important components. One is the religious aspect of it. The other is the legal aspect of it. So when you go through a divorce, for example, one aspect has to do with your belief in God and how God sees all of this and how the divorce came about. The legal aspect of it, which is part of the judicial system. If, for example, you have a child and the child looks at the judge and says that my father doesn't really much care about gender affirming, the court legally will take that child away from you. Now, that concept does not exist in the Middle East. So someone like me coming off of the boat, you know, and all of a sudden hears that particular concept, has no idea what the hell you're talking about. You know, what's happening in the Bay Area especially is that from fourth grade, not fourth grade, but third grade and up, or second grade and up, what you're doing is you're having a all gender bathrooms. You have one long sink with like 50 faucets. Boys and girls go into it. I mean, the doors are from, you know, floor to ceiling. But you're talking about, you know, 8, 9-year-old girls who will soon have their menstrual experience. And you have no idea what's happening to you. Kids at that age are mean. And so if, for example, you happen to have just come from some Asian country, some Near Eastern country, some Middle Eastern country, you walk in and just, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's something that Louis has to go through at a certain point if he continues to live in the Bay Area, that especially if he has a girl. I mean, girls and boys function differently. And you sit back and you wonder, well, this does not, it just defies common sense. You know, why would you want a boy who's like 8 or 9 or 10 walk into a bathroom where a girl is pooping, for example, or changing her pad, or whatever the case may be? And you realize that, well, there is a push now, it's an agenda now. And that push creates its own set of language. That language creates concepts. And then you have people for and people against. And they go at it like the WWF. Now, someone who doesn't know those words, those concepts, you know, those frames, kind of looks at this and says, this is really, really bizarre. Maybe we should just go back home to Mexico or to India, whatever. You know, so in many ways, or consider, for example, the dry eye syndrome. I don't know if you guys are familiar with some of the things that are coming out of the pharmaceutical companies. If, for example, you're walking and it's really windy and your eyes are dry, that's what the wind does, and you go to your physician and say, you know what, for some strange reason when I walk or when I'm sleeping or whatever, my eyes begin to itch. And your doctor, of course, Googles the stuff and says, yes, it's called dry eye syndrome. And there's a reason. My brother-in-law is a dentist, which means my sister used to be a pharmacist at Sutter Hospital in Sacramento. And one of the things that happens in the medical profession is that you have I was fired from Church's Fried Chicken in 1981. Okay, that was in Sacramento. And so I was desperate to get a job. So I ran into this company called Cutco, and they specialize in knives. What they didn't tell us, of course, those bastards, was that, I mean, this is the 1980s, that if you want to start selling knives to people, you first have to like buy a set yourself. And that was like $150 for a 19-year-old who just lost a job, has zero money in his pocket. So I, stole stuff and sold them, got about $150 and got the set, went out for about 2-3 months and sold only one set to some old guy who couldn't even see anything. I'm sorry, what was I saying? Yeah, they are. Anyways, I forgot. So, early signs of dementia. Hello, Val. Good, how are you? So, I'm trying to retrace and see where I was and how it happened. I can't, but oh yes, the pharmaceutical companies. So forgive me, Leah. So what happens is that you have people like me, but they sell medication. And so they go to dentists and they go to pharmacists and they say, by the way, our company just came up with this, tablet. This new way of doing dentures or whatever. Why don't you give a free sample to your customers, get them addicted, tell them that there is something wrong, and we'll give you a discount, 50%. And all of a sudden you realize that a problem that never existed for the entirety of the human race is all of a sudden in the picture. And now, if you want to create a problem, you have to create a language for it. And once you have the language, that language connects to the problem, now you have a market. Consider when cigarettes were legal to sell in like Safeway. So what you had is, if you're dealing with an industry that's in the business of killing people, tobacco, well, you have to also be in the industry that has the power to recruit new customers. Because if you keep killing people and not having new customers, you're going to go bankrupt. And so they decided to focus on high school students. And one of the things that they realized, and this is called market research, not so much human research, but market research. It's something that Karl Marx had talked about, that human beings now have a dollar sign to them, that everyone has a certain amount of money in their pocket, and the companies are there like vultures to take whatever these people have. Okay. And so they realize that, well, if the average height of high school kids are 5'5", 5'6", you need to make sure advertisements are like at eye level. So they don't have to go like this, they don't have to go like that. And they realize that one of the things that also happens to young adults in high school is that their sexual hormones begin to explode without them being aware or fully knowing what exactly is happening to them. So all of a sudden you have these really attractive young women with a lot of, skin showing, holding a camel, or whatever, Winston's or whatever. And all of a sudden what you have is you have a segment of population who's been addicted to tobacco for the past 50 years. They're about to die. Now you have a new generation. And so, again, to be able to sell anything, concept, language, and emotional bonding, without that, nothing is going to happen. I mean, part of the reason, for example, you're somewhat comfortable raising your hand, asking a question is because you don't feel like I'm a complete ass. I don't make fun of you. I listen to you as best as I can, try to respect you as best as I can, honor your question as best as I can, and then respond to it as best as my capacity allows, So, yeah. Yeah, Leah.
Do you think majority of the problems with our society can be credited to the fact that there are more people in this world now, and those people are living longer than they did in the past? There's about 8 billion people in the world now. Simple society and social hierarchy simply doesn't work, and they're living much longer. The average lifespan worldwide is now 77 as opposed to 30.
It's a great question. I think very much like the concept of love that came with the French around the 12th century. It was basically outlawed for the longest time in human history. Romantic love didn't exist, slowly came into the picture, and now it came to full blossom, 19th or so century. And I suppose the point I'm trying to make, whenever you are confronted with anything that's new, you have no idea how to deal with it. Let me give an example. My father is 92. I call him every day and I try to be on the phone with him for about an hour and a half, every single day, for one simple reason. At that particular age, you have a tendency of just forgetting things. And the more I can keep him on the phone, the more we can go back to our history, talk about the car wash, the more I think he can be at least mentally fresh and agile, okay? Now, do I have my own life? Absolutely. Do I have troubles that are unique to my life? Definitely. Do I have to carve out an hour and a half each day to tend to my father? Yes. Do most people have that particular luxury? The answer is no. People's lives are busy. I mean, Queen has 4, 5, 10 kids out there. They're all moving here and there. People are busy. And money is tight. The healthcare system sucks. Nursing home sucks. You care for your parents, but you're in a bind. Do I have my mom who just lost her husband come and live with us, but my husband doesn't like her or my wife doesn't like him? I got kids, my life is full. And you realize that the parent that you love now becomes a burden to your life. 60 years ago, that wouldn't be a problem. And our approach to death was different. The things we expected from our parents were different. The things our parents expected from their kids were different. Expectations are not so high now, I mean, I got to tell you, the past 15 years of being in the classroom, about 70-80% of what students share with me has to do with their parents. For me, it's something new. Going back to Matthew's question, when I was sent to India at the age of 11, the idea of abandonment, betrayal, your parents not loving you, it just didn't exist. You know, my father like belted me a few times, even in this country when I stole food because we didn't have any money and we were hungry. She belted me, and never once did I think of those things as being abusive. I just thought, you know, I deserve it. I stole something. I talked back to my father. Today, you have all these brand new, I'm not saying that, you know, physical abuse is valid or justified or it's the best way to kind of educate someone, but there are moments as parents, you just scream, you shout, you know, inject the fear of God into your kids because you just run out of options. And anyone with kids will tell you. I mean, Louis will experience that in a couple of months. Hopefully in a couple of years, not a couple of months. And so when you talk about longevity of life, the truth is people are living a long life and we don't really know what to do with it, you know, especially in an economy such as this, especially life moving so fast, especially parents being so needy. And it sucks, you know. You used to see your parents being healthy, you know, moving around. All of a sudden, your mother can't do anything, your dad can't do anything. And oftentimes, you don't even live in the same state. I mean, one of those sad things about Queen's daughter moving to Alabama, for example, is, you know, God forbid if she finds a companion in Alabama and decides to stay in Alabama and get married in Alabama and have a family in Alabama. And then one day she gets a call that, you know, your mom is really, really sick. Well, you know, she loves her mom, but the problem is she has her own family. What can she do? I mean, her daughter is going to do what my mom did. Her mom is in the hospital, you know, with tubes all over her body. And my mom says, you know, well, you know, I have a husband who's not doing so well. I got kids, I got my own life, but it's my mother. So she travels back home. How long can she stay? 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. That's it. At a certain point, it happens to all of us. At a certain point, you pray for your parents' death because it frustrates you. You have no power to heal them. You have no power to spend more time with them. You have no power to spend money on them. You just pour in so many different areas of life. You know, and even though you are made to feel bad and you feel guilty for such prayers, but it does really happen. You know, you say, well, you know, my mom can't do anything. She can't bathe, she can't eat, she can't breathe, she's stuck to machines. She just needs to be released. You know, and even when a woman who's really, really sick looks at a daughter or a son and says, you know what, turn off the machine, then we kind of condemn them for desiring to suicide. You know, there's still hope. And the truth is no. When someone knows that it's time for them to go, they'll just let you know. And you don't need to fight them. And at the very last hours of life, the best thing you can do is just honor their wishes. Is it true that sometimes pain just overtakes you and you can't think clearly, very much like getting drunk? Absolutely. Should you think twice about turning off the machine? Definitely. But if you're dealing with a situation where the person has tried again and again and again and failed, you know, maybe someone is trying to tell you something. So the point I'm trying to ultimately say is that maybe in the next 100, 200, 300 years, the culture will create enough narratives for us to know how to deal with parents who are over the age of 100. You know, the thing is, when you're dealing with a young culture such as this, kind of like a young person, the truth is they don't have the experience that an adult has. Therefore, when trouble hits, they don't have the resources to deal with the troubles. I mean, Louis is going to have his first child. I mean, he's like a virgin walking into an experience he's never had, you know, and there's not going to be much of a romance in parenthood. I mean, that romance will kind of disappear after like the second or the third or the fourth week. Then you realize it's just a tornado, you know, in your life every single day. And then, you know, if you happen to have a girl, for example, and you know the viciousness and the vulturous nature of men, then about 70% of your mental space is occupied with worry. I worry about my daughter. Is she going to make the right decision in choosing a companion? You know, is she going to show a lot of skin? I mean, depending on your background, of course. So these are just brand new things. And I don't think the American culture is right now profoundly powerful, which means that you don't really need to take an army to the Middle East or Mexico. All you got to do is show a few Britney Spears, a few Beyoncés, you know, a few this and that, and all of a sudden the culture is toppled and you have a brand new culture, westernized. And so I don't know if there is an answer to that. You could certainly, if you're rich enough, you could go to Palm Springs, I suppose. It's always nice and warm. They have good dates, not date romantic, dates that you eat. Great nursing homes. But for the most of us commoners, anyone else? Brandon, yes. How about now?
Why do we sometimes let our thoughts take over us when we're going through something?
Give me an example.
Like if you just got out of a breakup, or if maybe a family or a family member passed away. Like, why do those thoughts just keep I don't know, going at you, and there's just nothing you can do about it?
If I was to just dismiss class, you can go home right now. Are you gonna think about why the class was canceled for the rest of the day? Probably not. Yeah. So there are specific events that happens in life where it occupies a good amount of space inside you. And the reason is, imagine I'm your dad. And imagine we have a good relationship, right? And you make a coffee pot, and you try to wake me up, but I don't respond. And then I'm dead. Well, if you and I have been hanging out for the past 18, 19, 20 years, and we have a very strong bond, I occupy a good amount of your identity and your history. And it's difficult because all you have are memories, but the physical container is no longer there. You can still drink coffee, but every morning it's me and you around the dinner table or the table in the kitchen where I look at you, you look at me, we drink coffee with some bread and cream cheese. Okay. Now you drink the coffee, but the memories are there. You say, I wish my dad was still here. Okay. So if there is no relationship, and if that relationship doesn't have a strong bonding elements to it, there's a good chance that you won't think about it. So whenever there is a breakup of any sort, remember there is emotional connection. Hey, Deviante, did I say that?
Yeah.
Where are you going?
I have a class.
Well, just stay here for a minute.
Okay. So easy. You convinced me.
Things are good?
Yeah, they're doing better.
Good. It's good to see you. So when you lose something, you go through this grieving process. And it's something we've talked about plenty of time in this class, And you grieve because it has some value for you. It has some psychological narratives that live inside you. And you miss them. I mean, if you and I have a romantic relationship and all of a sudden you break up with me, I'm going to be asking why, how, when, who, what. I'll try to kind of get you back only to realize it's really not possible anymore. And then I have to be confronted with the fact that now I go home alone, I eat alone, I watch movies alone. And these are devastating things to kind of, experience. So the point ultimately I'm trying to make is when you keep replaying, certain things in your mind, it's simply because they matter. Let me give you an example. I got an email from my dean yesterday, and I have to go see her today at 10:30. So we have a part-time instructor who's been teaching for us for the past 11 years. So Lainey sucks at keeping their budget balanced. It's always in disarray, it's always chaotic, it's always messy, and the money's always spent on the wrong things. And so she sends me an email saying that, well, I have to kind of just not give her any teaching assignments this semester. She's been here for like 11 years. Why would you want to do that? And so since I got the email, it's been, occupying a good amount of space inside me. And part of it has to do with the fact that, look at all the people who work for the government. People have lives, they have kids, they have mortgages, they have bills to pay, but they're not getting any money. And even though America happens to have a lot of money in its reserves, it just refuses to pay people. Ask people to just work for free, day in and day out. And I've been poor, and I was a part-time instructor. And you realize when you're part-time, your life is just all over the place. You have to beg for a class because it pays for the rent. And so someone in power upstairs on the 7th floor just decides out of the blue that, what? We just don't want to give this person a class. Well, what the fuck not? Who the hell are you to just play with people's lives like that? We're talking about Lainey. We're talking about someone who was once a faculty, an instructor, now is in a different place, but has forgotten her past. Now, are there legitimate issues about not giving someone a class? Yeah, there are some serious budgetary issues. But I am sure we can find like $10 here and there to be able to take care of our part-time instructors, And so, because I care for this particular issue, it has occupied me. And I don't know if I should just go in there being angry or just go in there and just being calm. And it's something that I will figure out once I'm there. Depending on her tone of voice, depending on how I receive the information, depending if I can control my own emotions and be more intellectual, be more rational, and try to kind of knock some sense into her thick skull. So there are lots of issues to kind of consider, But what I will tell you is that whenever something occupies you, you lose a good amount of control. And losing control is not something we enjoy. Imagine like you come to this class and you get bored. What the hell do? You play with your phone. You pack up your stuff and you leave. You kind of begin to daydream or fantasize about this and that. That's how we distract ourselves from anything that's painful. The problem is you can only distract yourself for so long. If you've ever been in love, Brandon, and she or he walked out of your life, you realize that you want to get a good night's sleep, but you can't. You want to go somewhere, eat a good food, but you just don't have an appetite. You want to go out with your friends and party and have a good time. You just can't smile and you can't find their company enjoyable. And you go into your room, you turn off the lights, you shut the blinds, and you just sit in your room. And in as much as you try to regain control over your life, it's not going to be given to you. And I think it's something that you should, read the 4 Gospels. They're very, very interesting. That the sort of peace you want when something has devastated your life will not come in a way you want. And it's not based on your time. And it doesn't care for your patience. You have to wait and wait and wait. And you can certainly do like Freud, what he argued, you can drink it away, you can smoke it away, you can porn it away, you can do all sorts of things to distract yourself. But the fact remains that once you're sober, the matter you try to run away from is going to come back to you. That's one of the nice things about, for example, therapy, if you catch it at the early time. If there are some serious issues in your life, just take care of it when you're 10. Tell your parents you need therapy. And find a really, really good one. And then fall in love with your therapist if you can. So by the time you're like 18, you're just over that shit. But that's not the way we function usually in life. We kind of distract, kind of like an ostrich. One of the awful habits that an ostrich has is whenever it sees a predator, it digs a hole in the ground and puts her head in the hole and says, as long as I don't see the lion doesn't see me, and before you know it, the ostrich is like in heaven without a physical body. If ostriches have a soul, I don't know. They're really stupid animals, but that's besides the point. They're really, have you ever had an ostrich? They're so stupid. Far more than human beings. Yeah, Deviante. No. But I have a piano. That sounds like an ostrich. By the way, for those of you in this class who play piano or like to play piano, but don't have a piano, but like to have a piano. On MacArthur and some street, there's a piano just sitting in the middle of the street. It's about 100 years old. I went there to get something. I saw it. I played on it for about 5-10 minutes. It needs some tuning. Tuning is about $110 or so. If you have a van, if you have a bike, maybe you can just put it on your back and just carry it home. But, you know, you can just sand it, polish it, Clorox it. Yeah.
Kind of, I guess, building on what you were saying to Brandon, right?
Yeah.
What do you do while you play?
So let me give you this particular story. We have friends who just came from Iran, and then we have relatives, and both of these people have kids, and they're both 10 years old. Both girls are 10. The girl that came from Iran sits amongst adults and listens to the political and religious conversation for like 5 hours. Doesn't say a word, doesn't play with her cell phone, just sits there quietly. The kids that were born here, Persians, they can't sit still. They're running around, breaking things on the phone, and you force them to just sit back and listen, but they can't. And you realize that every culture creates its own rats, and those rats function specifically to the ways of the culture, you know. So for example, if this was, say, India, and you didn't like me, and you didn't like the class, and you didn't like the ideas, you would never play with your cell phone. You would look into my eyes. You could fantasize in your head, but you would never physically show me a body language that for me is interpreted as disrespectful. America is very, very different. So when you ask what can people do while they wait, it really depends on your background. Some people come from, say, parents who say, you know what, life is a waiting game. You sit your ass down, you don't say anything, you don't play with anything. And then you take that into the classroom. And it's a great, great training. But parents usually don't do those things because kids and parents don't really have such a relationship. Unless, you know, you as a parent happen to be very abusive, and the kid just, you know, whenever they look at you, they just fear you. And so out of the fear, they do all sorts of things that you ask them to do. I guess if you are future oriented, if you're a man and you say to yourself, you know, I think at the age of like 30, I want to get married, or I want to get my master's or a PhD. And you realize that you're always a little antsy, you know, you're always moving around, and you realize that school demands attention, focus, being able to pretend well, to deceive your instructors as if they're very interesting. And so that becomes your training ground. And you say, since I'm going to be in school for the next like 10 years, I must change certain aspects of who and what I am and how I behave. The only problem is that you have to go against like 20 years of habit, which is tough. And it's not a bad thing for you to all of a sudden become a Buddhist, where you become very mindful, you become very aware, and every time you forget, you create a mental image. And you always try to focus on that particular image. One of the things that Brandon had talked about, why is it that when you lose something, it overpowers you and you can't really think outside of that particular issue? When there is an image you're focused on, that image really becomes your GPS. The only problem with images is like anything else in life. After a while, when you have a certain tune to your alarm in the morning to wake up, your system gets used to that particular music. So you have to change it after 2 months. Otherwise, no matter how loud and for how long it rings, you're just not going to wake up. So it's important for you to change the alarm clocks. And maybe, for example, you've been to therapy for like 5 years and you don't realize that many things have changed about you. You need to change your therapist, because every therapist serves like an alarm clock. They wake up a different part of you. And the moment you become an addict to a certain ways of thinking, then it no longer has power over you. It doesn't really change you, move you, inspire you, excite you. So when you change to a different therapist, hopefully they will have something different to tell you that will come as an alarm clock, wakes up certain parts of you. So in regards to your question, what you do when you're waiting, you suffer. If you can, don't distract yourself. If you realize it's just too much, distract yourself for 10 minutes and then go back. And you just gotta start small, and then hopefully it'll just become part of you. You should see that movie with Robert Redford, who's now dead, The Last Castle. This is a man who's like a captain or a lieutenant or whatever, very high position in the military. And if you want to make sure that you're in a combat zone and you don't want to put your soldiers in harm's way, you can't act on emotions. You can't make your decisions on emotions. So your emotions as a soldier, kind of like what happened when who's that guy? Hegseth was giving a talk to all these military people, saying all this nonsense. We don't like fat people. We don't like skinny people. We don't like gay people. It's just like nonsense, right? And you would think that these people who've been in the battlefield for all these years would react, but no. Soldiers are trained not to function through emotions, but through rationality, being composed. And so what you find in this movie is that there's a fight that's taking place in the prison courtyard. Everybody gets involved, because everybody reacts, because everybody's an emotional junkie. Yeah, but Robert Redford, no. He's been into the battle a few times. He knows what happens when you get emotionally involved. You lose perspective, you lose your eyesight, you become blind. The emotions blind you. So he just stands back, he watches the whole thing, It's just very tough to do. And you should always learn from the prodigal son story in the Gospel of Luke. You gotta make a lot of mistakes. Hopefully you'll catch your mistakes. Hopefully you'll learn from those mistakes. And hopefully you'll become a bit more wiser after you've processed those mistakes. There is no shortcut, unfortunately. And you can't buy a book and, follow the steps and imagine that once you've read 300 pages, and you're going to be a saint. It doesn't work. Ray?
Yeah.
What's up? The what? That's just not funny. Yeah.
Why is it that purgatory is more shameful than hell itself? We don't like pain at all, but we don't like being, we don't like being in purgatory either. And when people are in purgatory, be it emotional, intellectual, or physical, they'll do impulsive things like causing themselves different kinds of pain so that they can live.
Purgatory this is just my own interpretation, and I may be wrong, probably am, but nevertheless. You're stuck between the yes and the no, between the good and the bad. Imagine, Leah, that you and I are in a relationship. You just want out. Every time I come home, you feel as if it's just hell. And it's hell. You're just waiting, for your time to just pack your stuff and go. You're not feeling guilty about leaving. You're just waiting for the right time, right? Now imagine that you have gotten together with EJ. It's an interracial relationship. And you and I are married, right? And you have a fling with him. Like, in the classroom when no one's here. You never intended for this, but it happens. Now you feel guilty. Now you feel ashamed. Now you feel cheap. You hate yourself for having done what you did. Now you live in purgatory. And that's because of the guilt that now lives inside you. You want to overcome it, you can't. You want to forget it, but you can't. You know that you've broken the marriage vows. You know that you have blasphemed against God, against humanity, against me, against yourself. And you try to recover, but you can't. And every waking moment is both hell as well as purgatory. You know, one of the things that is good about purgatory as well as hell is the following. If you're not completely crushed by it, and you're going to be somewhat crushed, but if you're able to recover, there's a good amount of things that you're going to learn from it. You're going to understand why people cheat. You're going to understand why relationships after a while just fizzle out. You're going to understand how it impacts the kids, how it impacts your own conscience, how it impacts your parents, how it impacts God, so on and so on. But purgatory is a place where your sins are purged, where your oxidations are removed, where you're able to, after a good amount of suffering, able to think a little bit better. But it's a tough place to be. Again, imagine you don't like this class or you don't like me, but you know you want the grade and you need the grade. 16 weeks of purgatory. There are moments where you catch a moment of inspiration, like from 9 to about 9:02. The rest is just hell, looking at the clock and then numbing yourself from the disaster. You know, so I suppose purgatory would be hell. Purgatory would be guilt, and hell would be just chronic depression, where you don't see anything out, any way out. It's completely dark. But remember, there's always a way out of things. It just takes creativity and guidance. Lay?
Yeah, I have a question. How do people sign themselves up for devastation?
Sign themselves up?
Yeah, like how do they volunteer themselves into it? Like how do they volunteer for devastation?
Okay. Just going to create a story, okay? Thank you.
So that's one more relationship.
It's relationships. Imagine that, look, people are what they are because of their history. Some people have processed the history, some people haven't processed the history, and some people have mildly processed, some people fully processed, okay? Now, you come with a history. I don't know what that history is. All I know is that I look at you, I like you. I hear the tone of your voice, I like it. You get a little closer to me physically, I smell you, I like you. So my senses, my 5 senses, are all in affirmation. I like Lay. Now remember, for me to like you, my 5 senses need to be in agreement. I can't like you physically, and then hear the tone of your voice and realize it's like squeaky. Right? Because then whenever you're around my friends and you say, "Hi, my name is Lay," that would be embarrassing for me. I wouldn't know what to tell my parents. My parents are going to say, "Well, why does she talk like that?" I said, "Well, she just has a shitty voice." So you're going to like tolerate that for like 50 years? Yeah. Yeah. So now what happens is my 5 senses says, Lay is good. Once you and I get comfortable, then what's going to happen is you're going to reveal to me your history, i.e. your psychology, i.e. your past. For the first time I realized, well, no dad, no mom, at a very young age, you've been angry most of your life, but my senses don't detect that because your psychology is beyond my five senses. That takes time for it to be unpacked. And so you do something really interesting. At a very young age, you come to realize that people can't be trusted. Right? You like to love people. You like to love a companion deeply. But there is this stuff inside that says, no, you loved your dad, see what happened. You loved your mom, see what happened. You love your first boyfriend, see what happened. People are not meant to be trusted. Okay? They're not trustworthy animals. I may be Jesus Christ, but you will do whatever you can to sabotage the relationship. Why? Because for the past 20 years, you have learned how to function in dysfunction. You've never learned how to be healthy and how to live in a healthy relationship. Now remember, going back to Leah's question about people in old age, okay? We know how to grieve when a parents die at the age of 40. Heart attack, die in their sleep, because that was common. And if they're sick, like cancer, there are no medical technology at this stage. 2 weeks later, they're dead. Now with the help of machines and medications, you can have a dying person stay alive for like the next 5 years, okay? Because health is something very new to you, and every time you get angry and scream and shout, I don't react the same way. We sit and we talk and he said, man, this is just too much work. Every time I scream, he sits me down and he wants to lecture me about this, and it's great, but they just don't know what to do with all that stuff. It's too much. So at a certain point, you basically trash this relationship in ways that only you know. And then you go out with EJ, who comes from a similar background. He's as messy as you are. And so one of the things you need to understand, we don't like messy things. If you go back to our history, our ancestors, we've always tried to create a physical life that's secure. Once physical life has become secure, then you begin to domesticate animals. Once you domesticate animals, there is no reason for you to spend 5 hours or 10 hours in the field trying to hunt a dinosaur. You have domesticated a cat, a dog, a sheep, a goat, an elephant. You just go in there, you chop their heads off and you eat. That's it. Okay. And so, sometimes domestication comes in the most violent of ways, because you don't know any better. And that is a pattern that, despite the fact that it turns your life upside down, it's the only life that you know. And in as much as you would want to change, it's enormously tough.
So you feel like that people sign themselves into the radio station because they want to relive routine?
From the past, yeah.
They don't know how to go into more healthier habits so that they end up.
The other thing is, most of the things that we do initially are kind of new to us. There are no pamphlets. We don't really listen to people. We're not the sort of animals that enjoy advice very much. We like to be a hands-on sort of animals. And so in as much as your mom or your dad will tell you, do A, B, C, D, you say, no, I don't want to do A, B, C, D. You guys are old. You guys are jerks and nerds. I want to create my own life. I don't know if you've ever gone to Yosemite during wintertime. You always want to create your own footprints on the snow. Only to realize that whenever you take a step in, you go in waist deep and it's too much. So you say, screw that. I'm just going to go where other people have gone before me. So there's a lot of different things at play. First it's your past. Second, life is just, we're moving in the dark. We really are in so many different ways. Consider, for example, I come to class and I say something. Now, I don't know you, and yet what I say triggers part of you, pushes a certain button. And you go home and you've been doing really, really well, but all of a sudden, what I said pushes a button and you get depressed. and you go back to the ways you've always been for the past 10 years. And now you begin to drink, or you begin to smoke, or you begin to do whatever, and then you drop out of school. Now, did I know this? Of course not. Did I do this intentionally? Of course not. Did it just happen? Yes. Who suffers? Both you and I. And that's just the way life is. I think the only difference about the sort of devastation that the way we respond to it is, I think culture creates. I think I've mentioned this story. When I was in India, we used to walk in the forest like every day for 5, 10, 15, 20 hours. And there was a bush, a plant that would hit your skin. And you had all these blisters. Next to the plant next to this plant was another bush that you just took a few leaves, you rub it on your skin and it goes away. I think certain cultures know that life is tough, that human beings live in the dark, and oftentimes they make mistakes. So at every corner there is like a book of poetry or a book of wisdom, whether it's literature, whether it's movies, whether it's just cultural rituals or parents or a support system that are there just to guide you just in case you fall. نگفتی گر بیفتی گیرم از دست کنون افتاده تر ککنونم از دوست. That you told me that when you were going to give birth to me, that I'm going to fall many, many times, and every time that I fall, you promised to come and grab my hand and pull me out of darkness. I have fallen now. Come and grab me. When you don't have a culture that revolves around those principles, then you're left to your own devices. And the problem is you all of a sudden find yourself in a quicksand. The more you struggle, the deeper you go. And that's the problem with people who are depressed. The more they try to get themselves out, the deeper they go. Somehow from somewhere, someone needs to enter their life and give them a place of shade or comfort for, a while so they can. Yeah.
How do you stop struggling without giving up?
If you struggle to be in this class, I think the hope for an A or a B or a passing grade would be sufficient. What you need to combat struggle, dissatisfaction, unhappiness, depression, really is just hope. If you happen to become like a Martin Luther King Jr. or a Malcolm X, where you know that at a certain point you're just going to get shot, you come on the stage with the hope that today I'm going to give my sermon, and if I die, I die. Kind of like Mahatma Gandhi or Jesus Christ. That you live kind of in purgatory in the sense that there's a part of you that's filled with light. There's also another part of you that's filled with darkness. That you're on the stage in order to create inspiration and hope amongst your community. You also know that there's a lot of ignorance and stupidity around you that could end whatever it is that you're hoping for. And you live in that particular environment, the yes and the no. So hope is the driving force. Why is Louis coming to class? Not because he likes school. He's hoping he'll up his salary, that he can hopefully give his child a better life, a life that he himself perhaps didn't have. He can provide a better, a more comfortable physical space for his wife, take care of his parents maybe. It's all hope. That's really the pillar of life. Hope. And when you lose that, and you struggle, man. I mean, you buy books that can have paragraphs to inspire you. You talk to people, you watch movies, you go for a walk in nature, you do all sorts of things to get rid of the darkness that live inside and outside. At a certain point, you're just so worn out. And you could be 10, you could be 110. Age doesn't matter. There comes a point where you're just exhausted. It's like when you play soccer or football for basketball for 50 hours, for 10 hours. Yesterday I went for a walk for 3 hours. This morning I wanted to go for a walk because that's what I need to do to keep the heart pumping. I realized my knees are just tired, and then you just give up. If I have a heart attack, fuck it, fine. I don't care. My knees can't do it. And so the point I'm trying to make is I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen Mike Tyson fight in the ring. His opponents, they really try to get up after being knocked down, and some, are stupid enough to do so. And there comes a point where, I mean, Trevor Berber or Barber or something, Urban, yeah. I mean, you're a world champion. Your opponent is Mike Tyson. How old is Mike Tyson? 18. First round. I mean, he's like walking around dizzy. Second round, he gets knocked down. He gets up. He gets knocked down again. He tries to get up, but he can't. And the point I'm trying to make, there comes a point where the referee jumps in, or something about you just jumps in and says, you know what? You just can't do it anymore. Life is like a Mike Tyson, Or, like you take a calculus class thinking that you're able at this stage in your life to kind of just go through 16 weeks of hell. And, the first day is okay because it's only 2 + 2 = 4. The second class meeting, it's like things you don't really understand and you struggle to understand. And the second week you say, you know what, fuck this. You just drop the class completely because you just don't know what to do with it. You just don't have the capacity. I mean, certainly I did. And the classes I knew I just didn't have the capacity to understand. I had my friends do it. Did I cheat? Yeah. Raise your eyes? Definitely. That's how you survive. And most things in life, So you have to really be in a bad shape where you just give up and you stay locked up in your room. Some people are lucky enough where they experience the cloud of gloom. At a certain point, the winds come in and the clouds go away and the sun appears. And you say, hope, I knew it. Some people are not that fortunate. The cloud stays, no wind, no windows open. And just don't know who to blame. Do you blame the parents? Do you blame politicians? Do you blame religion? Do you blame people? Do you blame the fact that there is just no support system for anyone out there? I mean, it sucks. When Laney was struggling some years ago, they spent many millions of dollars on the football field. Classrooms were dirty and smelly. Chairs were all broken. Classes were being cut left and right, and yet they spend all this money on new buildings. Doesn't make any sense. And sometimes you sit back and you say, there's some serious fucked upness about the way people think about things.
We'll mess with some people. I have to go to class.
What class is it?
Computer science.
I'm so sorry. My brother teaches that, computer science, in American River College. So if you need any help, let me know. So I'll give you his email and you guys can go back and forth. Yeah. All right, buddy. Take care. It's good to see you. Huh?
When does your class start?
9. But I'm here at 4. You're always welcome to come by and visit.
I'm here.
4 a.m.
4 a.m.
What did you do to yourself or to your beard?
I shaved my chest and put it on my face. I'm just kidding.
So fuller and thick, you look kind of cute.
Well, it's that's the Middle Eastern part of me. You shave today, you have a full beard tomorrow. You can't help it. Yeah.
Well, looks nice on you.
Well, tell that to my wife. Yeah. You know how the Jews don't like tattoos because of their history? Persians don't like beards because for the past 40 years, the current regime, politicians in our country, are all religious folks. And they have made a complete mess of people's lives. And so they all have beards. So every time, we have a friend and they see me, they say, what the hell is this? Are you what? Are you a Muslim now? I say, no, I just have just a beard. Go shave it because you look like one of those people in Iran. I say, okay, I'll go shave it tomorrow.
It just keeps getting thicker.
Yeah. Anyone else? Tiffany, I'm sorry, I caught you at a bad time. Leah? Once again, for those of you who are free after this class, you're always welcome to go to the office and just sit and hang out with other people who are there. Yeah.
Does intelligence condemn you to suffering?
Yes.
Can a reflective mind ever be at peace?
No. To be able to reflect means you have to be able to see things as clearly as you possibly can. You know, it's kind of like, forgive me for this, like awful example, but I'll give it to you. You know, kissing someone can be fun. But then you tube saliva and what lives on your tongue. And you really want to puke. And imagine you keep watching this show on YouTube. Two people, open mouth, kissing, their tongues are all over the place. Okay. And then you put all that stuff under a microscope. And then you say, that's so disgusting. And then time passes and you find yourself in a park with some person that you like, and now you want to kiss them. And then all the 5,000 hours of YouTube saliva that you've watched comes to your awareness. And you say, you know what, can we just hold hands? You really do want to kiss because it's an expression of intimacy. It's the only way perhaps sometimes you could kind of show your affection for another human being. But you know too much about saliva. That's your purgatory. You have to overcome what you know, what you have seen. And if you're able to forget, then yes, ignorance will save you. You can go and you can kiss for the next 5 hours. If on the other hand, while you're kissing, you're also remembering all the images on YouTube showed to you, you'll have like a second of fun, 20 seconds of misery, then second of fun, and 50 seconds of misery. Then you kind of push your companion away, and then you run to the bathroom and you just puke. But you had a few seconds of fun. I mean, that's what reflection does. So, I think when you walk into a philosophy class, most of your philosophy instructors in the future will say, Socrates said that the unexamined life is not worth living. And I think it's a nice bumper sticker, and it's usually spoken by people, who've never really examined, but, they live in their office, they write books, they don't really have much of a life except to just talk big talks. Once you realize that examining things, up close and personal, devastates you, your motto will change. And the motto is, the unexamined life is worth living, but not the examined life. Look at EJ. He is miserable. Why? He had the wrong instructors. He was always told, examine. And now when he hears, don't examine, well, he's in the habit of examining. His life is doomed. What does he do at the age of 19? Nothing. What can you do? You're too young, you lack experience, so you have no choice but to drink and to smoke. Yeah.
So what's the thin line between overthinking and reflecting? Or is it the same thing?
No, I think we occupy both worlds. It just depends on which world you occupy most often. Imagine you and I are in a relationship. It's not that I'm abusive 24 hours a day to you, but I am abusive like 15 of those hours, but the 10 hours I can be nice. My uncle's daughter, she was married to a guy who was addicted to heroin. He was always angry. He was diagnosed with cancer. This is like after 40 years of marriage. The last month of his life, he was like a saint. So when I called her to give her my condolences, she says to me, Amir, while she was like sobbing, if it wasn't for that last month, I wouldn't have cared if he was alive or dead. But the last month of his life, He had become a human being I had never seen before. He was like a saint. He was nice and kind and compassionate and generous. And it came from nowhere. And I missed that part. So I missed the fact that he's dead, you know. And so if you occupy a world that is just a reactive world, you just react because that's what you've done for the past 10 years, that's your life. You know, once in a while you reflect on the way you react and you say, you know what, I shouldn't have said that. Why do I always have to be such an idiot, you know? But that moment of clarity that comes with a good amount of reflection lasts for maybe 5 minutes. Then you go back to being, you know, yourself. It's a story told by Jacob Needleman. He used to be a philosophy teacher at San Francisco State. A very interesting man, very interesting life. He died a couple years ago. He was invited to go see, I think, Apollo 7, go to the moon. And he says before, you know, this giant machine rose up to go to the moon, all of us were sitting, we were having coffee, we were talking about like stupid things. And then the voice of Walter Cronkite, I don't know, this is my time. This heavy-set man comes on TV and has this beautiful voice, you know, telling the world about what's happening in America and elsewhere. Says, the countdown is going to begin now, 8, 9, 10. And Needleman says, the voice of, you know, this man comes in, all of us begin to become a bit more quiet. And then all of a sudden you have this orange flame coming from this, you know, machine. And then it goes up. He says, our mouths are all open. No one says anything. Everything is so quiet, like you're in the presence of God. You know, that's what happens when you find yourself in the presence of someone like Malcolm X or Jesus Christ or a Socrates. You have all these things you want to say, but all of a sudden they just quiet you down. And then he says, for the next 5 minutes, we're just watching the spaceship, you know, go up. And then the experience goes away. And then something about us also dies, and we go back to being our old, stupid self. And that's what happens, you know. So if you live in a reflective world where you just unpack things, try to see what's inside, understand them, then that's the whole of your life. Most of your life. Do you sometimes react? Absolutely, you know. But if you have been in the habit of reflection, and once in a while you react, you catch yourself reacting. And then you beat yourself up emotionally. You know, I've been reading for the past fucking 40 years. How could I be so stupid? I act like a child. Okay. If on the other hand, you're in the business of just reacting to forces on the outside, you know, to just protect yourself in some shape or form, once in a while you reflect and it makes you feel good, and then you forget, and you don't really care. Which world is better? I think if you want to live life as best as possible, you can. It's good to reflect 55% and react 45%. You know, it's something that Middle Easterns say about marriage. If you can find someone who is 51% good and 49% evil, you have a good man on your hand, or a good woman. Just make sure they're not 51% evil and 49% saint. Yeah. Anyways, look, it's good to see all of you. Is it time, by the way? Okay, we have 3 minutes. Anyone else? Matthew? Louis?
No.
Leo? Lay?
No.
No what?
No question, no comment, no concern.
You have no concerns? How old are you now?
Okay.
Old enough to know better, but you don't.
Right?
What a shame.
That's a human trait. Human deficiency.
Okay, have a nice weekend.